I spent 12 years as a special agent, undercover operator with the Department of Homeland Security. Most of my time, 90% of that time, was spent investigating these cases, child crimes, child trafficking. And in fact, those numbers are correct that are being, these are Department of Labor, UN, these are sources that, the best we have that say that there's close to 6 million children or more who are forced into sex slavery, labor slavery, or organ harvesting. And I can attest that I have been involved in cases involving all three of those forms of slavery multiple times, and is a real thing. It's not even far from home. The United States is the number one consumer year after year of child rape material. And oftentimes we're close to number one in production. And it's a serious matter. The case, the story in Sound of Freedom kicks off with the rescue of a little boy at the port of entry at the southern border. That's a real story, a real boy that I was on that port of entry. I was 10 years on the southern border. So when you have 85,000 unaccompanied minors showing up in the last 2 years, being let into the country without the sponsor being vetted, DNA checked, background checked. I call it the economy of pedophilia. The United States, we're the demand. 85,000 children, thousands of them are under 5 years old, are let into the country. So we have a serious problem, and it's not being addressed as it should be. Hopefully, this film can do that.
What has been your experience with regard to so-called mainstream media or legacy media coverage? How much attention has been paid to this, and if not much, why? And if reasonably, who and how?
Well, I think not very much has been. Attention has been given by mainstream media. Oftentimes, it's more innocent than cynical, perhaps, where it's just, this is too dark. I don't want to expose our audience to this horrific thing. We film our operations. I mean, I'm going to post today another operation in West Africa of a baby factory. I mean, these are real cases where they've kidnapped women, as young as 13-year-old children, and they impregnate them, they rape them, and they make babies, and they take these babies and sell them for their organs, sell them for sex, sell them for satanic ritual abuse. Like, it does sound crazy. That's why I film it. We film our operations so that we can show the world this is very real. It's really happening. And I think if there's 2 million children forced into commercial sex, which is the most kind of credible statistic that we can find, a lot of people are involved. So there is a more cynical answer to your question, which may be there's people that don't want this exposed because they're involved in it.
So I'm going to harass you a bit here from the Wikipedia page. There is some, not that I'm a particular fan of Wikipedia pages, depending on the circumstances, but there are some criticisms of what you're doing, and I thought we might as well address them right off the bat, because people who are watching are going to be, look, man, if I was coming across this for the first time, and in some ways I am, I've got two choices in front of me, don't I? I can either presume that you've discovered something that's ongoing and of tremendous significance, that's terribly dark, or I can assume that the difficult work that you had done for a decade, genuinely addressing these problems, has made you hypersensitive to a threat and willing to magnify it, and it would be easier just to ignore you as a consequence. Now, that would be the preferable outcome to such an investigation, wouldn't it? So you can, as you said, you can understand why people might want to avert their eyes from such a thing. So I'm going to walk through these criticisms, and maybe you could, you can respond to them, and we can get that out of the way before we go deeper into the film and your operations. So your group, and this is Operation Underground Railroad, and tell me if I get anything wrong here, says it devours conspiracy theories, though founder Tom Ballard was criticized for refusing to condemn the QAnon conspiracy theory. I have no idea what the hell that means. Do you know what that's referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. We that's a lie on Wikipedia. We have absolutely in our FAQs for years have condemned the majority of what we see with conspiracy theories. So they like to attribute me to the QAnon movement. There may be some truths in there, but there's so many falsehoods on top of that So our FAQs refute that immediately because it discredits the movement. In fact, I would go so far as to consider that maybe certain people who don't want this known are responsible for some of the conspiracy theories in order to discredit the movement. And they go too far. They go too far in their assessment of things. But yeah, we absolutely have disavowed what's generally coming out of QAnon.
Yeah, well, it says, it's very vague on Wikipedia. It says to condemn the QAnon conspiracy theory. Well, I know perfectly well that there are more than one conspiracy theories, let's say, on QAnon, so I'm not even exactly sure what it's referring to. What is there a particular conspiracy theory that you were criticized for refusing to condemn? Do you have any more specific details about that?
I mean, I'm not sure what exactly they're talking about. They might be referring to the fact that there's something called adrenochrome, where they're taking children's blood and devouring it and so forth. And I've explained my experience with that, and I just did in West Africa and other places. We've seen this in several parts of the continent of Africa, and it's very real. It's very real. This witch doctory. They take these children. They take their organs. They take their blood. They drink it. They take the genitalia of children and hang it over the rooftop of their businesses, thinking that the dark gods will bless them. These are real things. And so I might say something like that, and then they connect it to something that a QAnon person says about, a celebrity who must be doing this too, but there's no evidence to back that, and they make a false connection there, and so that's the only example I can think of.
Okay, got it. Well, the next thing it says is that the Operation Underground Railway falsely claimed that it had entered a partnership with American Airlines. That was in 2022. So what do you have to say about that?
Oh, that's a great one. So a PR firm who represented us made a deal with American Airlines. It came to us and said, shoot the video. They're going to put this video on your, they're going to put this video on their airlines. They shot the video of me. I just get a call from our PR company to put me in a studio. I give a video that I think I'm talking to the passengers for 1 month on American Airlines. Apparently the deal fell through. The PR company didn't tell us that. And our marketing team put out, hey, we're going to be on American Airlines. The PR company apologized. We fired them. They said, we can't believe we didn't get the message to you. And that was it. And of course, there's people that want so badly for us to be wrong or us to not do what we say we do. So they exploited that. I think that was a Vice magazine, very incredibly dishonest journal. I can't even call them journalists. The Vice magazine, they've done a series of hit pieces on us, and I encourage people to read it. Read Vice, because everything they say is so ridiculous and so dishonest.
Right. Yes. Well, and I do believe, if I remember correctly, that Vice has also declared bankruptcy in the last few weeks, and I can't imagine an organization more richly deserving precisely what they've got. I've heard from behind the scenes just exactly what it was like to work for the narcissists and psychopaths who ran that operation. So I think we can dispense with that. So there was a 2021 follow-up article from Vice, but I don't think we're going to. I'll just read part of it because it's so ridiculous. Conflating consensual sex work with sex trafficking. Yeah, well, that's exactly the kind of Weasley, what would you call it, criticism that I'd expect from people who are trying to justify the sorts of behaviors that you are attempting to expose. Then there's a 2021 article in Slate criticizing a 2014 raid conducted by Operation Underground Railway in the Dominican Republic, saying that it was likely to have traumatized the trafficked children. Anne Gallagher, an authority on human trafficking, wrote in 2015 that OUR had an alarming lack of understanding about how sophisticated criminal trafficking networks must be approached and dismantled, and called the work of OUR arrogant, unethical, and illegal. So, Anne, have a way at that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm grateful for this opportunity. So someone like Anne Gallagher, who lives 3,000 miles away from any operation we've ever done, is not qualified to talk about what our operations. She can't give any details. She can't give any examples. The Slate article is a fun one to address. I've addressed it several times. We early on we brought a blogger down to watch our operations. We invite people down. Like Tony Robbins has been down. We invite politicians. The Attorney General of Utah has come on our operations. If we're hiding something, that's the last thing we would, of course, do. So we bring this journalist, this blogger. I won't call her a journalist. And we thought she was a friend, and she came and watched a legitimate operation happen in Dominican Republic. There were 7 traffickers who showed up, 7 traffickers arrested. There were 20 plus people rescued. 9 of them were children. You can't always control who shows up to the sting party. The traffickers bring who they will, but 9 children showed up. They were all liberated from the control of their captors. This blogger then wrote 2 glowing stories about it, that she witnessed this. She had very minimal exposure to the operation itself. She witnessed it. Some 7 years later, she decides to use it, in my opinion, to somehow increase her social media following as our foundation grew. And she writes a story that it's in Slate. Now, here's the key thing. 9 children rescued, and 9 children had 3 years of aftercare services in this operation provided by International Justice Mission, one of the top authorities in aftercare and fighting human trafficking. 7 traffickers were not only arrested, but all 7 were convicted. So she chose the wrong case to criticize. Now, tellingly, if anyone's going to write a story about that operation, good, bad, or otherwise, and they leave out the part that says 7 traffickers were arrested and 7 traffickers were convicted, and 9 children were liberated and had 3 years of aftercare to heal them. If you leave that part out, either you are extremely incompetent as a researcher and writer, or you're a liar. Either way, the story has 0 credibility on that fact alone. Because she doesn't even report on those two essential elements.
All right. Well, we've hypothetically dispensed with Vice, which of course is it's pretty funny that that's what they named their organization as far as I'm concerned. And we'll leave the Slate issue aside. Jim, let me ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Do you want to, first of all, tell people about your involvement with Angel Studios, a little bit about your career and why this particular movie, Sound of Freedom, it's opening, in early July? Is it July? When does it come out?
It comes out July 4th week, so next week. Next week, it's out in theaters nationwide.
So let me turn to Jim. Jim, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So do you want to detail out your association with Angel Studios? Tell everybody first who Angel Studios are, what they've done, and I've watched a lot of The Chosen, by the way, which I thought was extremely high quality. Do you tell us about the studio? Tell us about your involvement with them, about your career, and then about your attraction to this particular movie.
Well, let's start with the movie first. I have 3 adopted children from China. I became aware of the dangers that go on with children around the world and through that process. Then I became aware of Tim Ballard, and coincidentally, then my friend Eduardo Verostegui brought me this script because many of the actors that they had offered it to didn't want to get involved in this particular project. I read the script. I loved the movie Taken, and I thought this is like Taken, but with a much bigger heart. Then Tim Ballard came to the meeting. He had seen 2 films that I did. One was called The Count of Monte Cristo, and then the other one was The Passion of the Christ, and he felt that I'd be the right guy to play him. Angel Studios, I had no connection to them until a few months ago when they wanted to do this movie, and their idea was to sell 2 million tickets for these 2 million trafficked children.
So why is it that why in your estimation did a number of actors turn down the opportunity to play the role? And why And why did you decide to forego that risk and to climb aboard?
I foregoed the risk because when you have 3 children that you loved and you'd give your life for, it kind of connects into Tim Ballard. And Tim did this for this little girl and the children that he saves. It's something is a greater purpose that even your career, like I went through this with Mel Gibson when we did The Passion, that my career was the last thing I thought of. What I thought about was the God I love. And I put this, and how I look at it is that this God that I love, he loves me and he deserved to be loved back. And so I would be nothing without him. He gave me my purpose in this life. So the Tim Ballard, I was very fortunate that he had seen those films. And when I looked at, and I think Tim made this comparison, Schindler's List was a very powerful weapon, but it came 50 years too late. This film is now. This is exposing it now during that time. And I believe that is probably why it's easier to get an actor to do a movie 50 years later. There's no controversy. It's over. But the individuals, imagine if Rwanda, if that story had been made, that movie had been made during that time, or that they could see it. You have to look at these situations and understand that good people sit back and do nothing and allow this evil to